I got rid of almost a decade of anxiety and panic attacks in just a few days. And today I'm going to share with you exactly what I did so that you might be able to do it too. By the way, my name is Chris. I'm an emotional mastery coach. This is one of the main areas I focus on. I've helped dozens and dozens of people find the change and the happiness they're looking for. And many people find relief from anxiety using what I'm about to explain. I want to do like a caveat right from the top to say there's no one size fits all. Like there's no one solution that works for everybody. If that were true, then everyone would just know it and do it. But what I can say is this worked for me and it works for the people that I work with. And so it's possible that it can work for you too. So I'm just going to share my story and then share exactly the steps that I took in order to completely change my life for the better. I guess I should also just throw out a caveat that this is not medical advice. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a licensed therapist or anything like that. I'm just a guy who discovered how to understand his emotions and what they were actually telling me, and then teaches people how to understand themselves and their emotions so that they can find the change that they're looking for too. And I think it's way simpler than sometimes we think. And especially as someone who used to have anxiety, overthinking was absolutely a part of it. And so now on the other side of it, looking back, I can kind of realize that sometimes the simple things are the things that most helped. And once I got to a place where I kind of gave myself permission to let the simplicity of it be true, it really opened my eyes and my world to experience things completely differently. All right, so I had anxiety for many years, starting in my mid-20s through my early 30s. And at the time I was living in Los Angeles, I wanted to work on Conan O'Brien's talk show ever since I was a kid in like middle school and high school. And so after I went to college in Orlando to study film. I watched movies for college. That's what I did. And then I flew out to LA shortly after that and started getting work in television. And I started in sitcoms and then eventually found my way to daytime talk shows. Jeff Probst was my first daytime talk show that I worked on. And then I worked on Queen Latifah's show, her daytime show when that was on. And then I eventually found my way to working on Conan's show, and my dream manifested. It was that's another story for another video. But throughout this time in television, it's kind of can be a high pressure situation. Lots of long hours often in TV, lots of stress, and lots of like fast changes. And so while I was in that world, I was starting to build up this sense of underlying anxiety. And it sort of manifested in many ways of like, it was often about bathrooms, like I had IBS, which I don't know if my IBS fueled my anxiety or my anxiety fueled my IBS, or it was probably a loop that like both of them fed each other. But I had real fears of not being able to be around a bathroom, like not being near a bathroom. What if I don't make it to the bathroom in time? That was a big fear of mine. And so it started, it made like driving to work become an issue. Like even though my work was maybe like 15 minutes of driving, some of that was on highways. And I was like, what if I get stuck? My anxious mind was like, what if I get stuck on the highway and there's like standstill traffic and it doesn't and it doesn't free up, and then I have to use the bathroom, and I have nowhere to go, and it was like that kind of stuff, and it caused me to have to like force myself to use the bathroom 3 or 4 times sometimes in the mornings before I would even before I would like allow myself to get in the car to drive to work. And of course, that just made my system really, I don't know if fragile is the right word, but just sort of like I was I was really like forcing myself to do things, which is not great. And and it would be like travel was horrible. Even almost worse than planes was the Uber to or the Lyft to the airport, because I was in a car that felt like, okay, well, what if I need to go, and what if we're on the highway, or what if we need to go and we're under time pressure to get to the airport early, and I don't like, what would I do? Ask the person to stop the car? It's like, it was a whole thing. Anyway, this became very disruptive to my life. And by the way, it wasn't just the bathroom. It was also like this underlying anxiety about everything, about like work. Was I good enough? Was I doing a good job? Was I going to get fired? Was I ever like, was I standing out enough? It was also around social situations. Like I had social anxiety, not sure, I didn't like to be in crowds. I didn't like I didn't know what to talk to people about. I felt very like judged and very insecure and just anxious. And so I had this underlying anxiety that affected me all the time. It was like this underlying anxiety that was kind of often present. And it started affecting, well, obviously my body. It started affecting my body in terms of like my bathroom use, but also it started affecting my body in the sense of like getting like tightness and being so I just felt on edge a lot, and overly stressed, easily overwhelmed, constantly not sure what to do. And so anyway, over the years, through my 20s, it started getting worse and then worse and then worse and then worse. And it started resulting in like panic attacks. And I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack, but it was probably the scariest experiences that I've ever had, because my body would panic and freak out, and my mind would panic and freak out, and my mind didn't know what my body was doing, and my body didn't know what my mind was doing, and it felt like I was going to die, and that there was no stopping it, and I didn't know what the answer was besides like, I guess, ride it out. And I would get them at home and I would get them at work. And there was a day on Conan that I was sitting at my desk, and I had this cup. I got like a Dixie cup of like trail mix from the kitchen. And I was sitting at my desk and I was eating the snack. And then my brain popped the idea as I was eating it of, what if I'm allergic to peanuts? I'm not allergic to nuts. I've never been allergic to nuts. But as soon as my mind said that, I was like, what if I'm allergic to nuts? And then I was like, oh my God, is my throat like feeling normal? And I started getting in my head, right? Like anxiety starts to spiral you. And I started to be like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And obviously I stopped eating the nuts. And I just kind of could feel the, often with panic attacks for me, it would be like waves of heat. Like I would just get these waves of heat that like flushed through my body. And these like, like the hairs would stand up on my skin, and I'd start getting like little like shaky kind of feelings. And And so I remember standing up and saying, I don't want other people to see me having a panic attack. Cause that was the other thing. Like, I also had like insecurities and fears about other people, like what they thought of me. And so I tried to, in as best composure as I could. Luckily, I didn't have any like pressing thing to do that day or that, in that moment. And I was able to step out of the office and we were at Warner Brothers at the time. This was during his TBS show. And I walked into the, like, the bathroom. The closest public bathroom that I knew was at Warner Brothers, which was kind of near the security office, near the entrance. And I just went in a stall. And of course, when I also have a panic attack, it's like my body is like wanting to just flush itself. And I guess that's a fear response. It makes sense. Like you poop yourself to like run faster or something. And I don't know if that's like historically what we did as humans, but I feel like that's what my body was often doing. But I think that's also because I trained myself to have, I guess, that issue. Anyway, and then I remember being in there and I was trying to remember what my therapist had, or one of my therapists had said at the time, which was like going through my like I was trying to do exercises essentially. Like, I remember I was told a suggestion of like, name 5 things that you can see and 4 things that you can hear and 3 things that you can smell and 2 things. I don't remember the order, but anyway, clearly that didn't really, I was spiraling. I was like in the stall and I was spiraling and I didn't know what to do. And it's hard to focus on anything in the midst of a panic attack. Like I was so focused on, is my body going to shut down? Am I going to be able to breathe? Remember, like for me in that moment, for that specific one, it was like, am I having an allergic reaction to something? So I was panicked that my body was shutting down, or like that I was in like, what's funny is there was a nurse's office right below my office in the Conan building. There was like below us I was on the 2nd floor, but if I just walked down the stairs, like right there was like a nurse's office, but I didn't go there. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was because I knew at the time it was a panic attack and therefore it wasn't a medical issue, or if I was too afraid of like what they would think. I don't know. I honestly don't know. When you panic, and I'll speak for myself, when I panic, I'm not thinking straight. I'm not thinking clearly. And so this was my experience. Anyway, I was in the stall spiraling, and I remember I felt like I was going to die. And I remember like, it felt like, oh my God, the room was kind of like, it was almost like the room was spinning, and I was getting my waves of heat, and I was sweaty. And then there was then I heard a tram come up outside, and there was a tour for the Harry Potter exhibit at Warner Brothers, and it was a bathroom break, and they came in, and I heard a bunch of voices come in at the same time to like use the bathroom. Didn't help, and I had to ride it out. But moments like that would happen to me, even at home, and not about like, oh, I think I'm allergic to something. It was like, it was always something different, but my mind would just take something and start spiraling, and then I would get into a full-on panic attack where my body and it was almost like my body was out of my control at a certain point. And anyway, it was a horrible way to live, and I went to therapy for it, and I also got on medication for it. At the time, I tried a few different medications, but we landed on Lexapro after a while. And those things, I would say they helped at the time, but it didn't get rid of anything. Like, it helped, but it didn't get rid of things for me. And And I was under the impression, and I think I was told by, I had many, over the years, I had many different therapists, but I think I was told at one point, someone said, like, you're going to have therapy, or sorry, you're going to have anxiety for the rest of your life. You'll be able to manage it, and you can get pretty good at managing it, but you're going to have it for the rest of your life. And so I was under the assumption that that was true. And so I lived with this for many years. And then when I was when I was 33, it was July of 2019. I remember it specifically because it was such an impactful moment in my life. I stumbled onto a book. A book was recommended to me. This weird series of events happened, and I'll tell that story in a separate video sometime. But these weird synchronicities kept happening. These weird, like, how is that even possible that this keeps happening? That this thing, that the timing is working out in that way, and that I keep lucking out and getting like these cool things happen. And I was telling this to a cashier at a store I was in. I was like, these cool things just keep happening to me, and I don't know why. And she said, oh, my roommate's experiencing the same thing. And she started noticing that after she read the book, Ask and It Is Given, which, by the way, is a very spiritual self-help book. So I only really recommend it to people if you're super spiritual. Because if you're not, it's very out there in a way, like the way it's framed and introduced. But the thing that I pulled out of it, and so I started listening to it as an audiobook, and the thing I pulled from it was, the biggest piece that I got from it was that pay attention to your emotions because they're telling you something. And so I started doing some things, and within literally a few days, and I'm not like exaggerating, it was like 2, maybe 3 days, I didn't feel anxiety anymore. I just didn't feel it. It wasn't, and it's almost even less like it faded away. The more accurate way to describe it for me would be like, I just didn't notice it being there. That underlying dread, or that underlying like nervous energy and anxious energy, just wasn't there anymore. And I started to get to a point where I was like, I started essentially following my heart, and I'll get to the steps in just a second of what I did specifically, but I started just like following my heart, paying attention to my emotions, and thinking in different ways. And I came to a point where I was like, I don't even, it's almost like I had this instant, or this regular feeling of lightness. I was I got this sensation in my chest that was that would go throughout the day, not like every second of the day, but like regularly through my day, and for long stretches at a time, where there was this lightness in my chest that felt like, when you go over a bump, like if you go in a dip, you're driving down the road and you hit a dip in the road, and your heart kind of like comes up in your chest a little bit, and there's this like light fluttery kind of feeling. I would get that from like sitting in standstill traffic and like looking at a pink sky because it was pretty. Or I would get it when I looked over and I saw like a woman laughing at like talking to the taco truck guy, and they were laughing together. I would get this like fluttery like sensation in my chest. And after a few weeks of that, I was like, is there something like wrong with me? Is there something like wrong with me and my body for like, but I noticed it would only happen when I was feeling moments of like appreciation or peace. It would only happen when I was feeling some positive, high frequency emotion. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing a pattern. Whenever I feel really good, whenever I'm like tapped into like feeling love or appreciation or peace, I would get this feeling in my body. Okay, so that's probably a good thing. And weeks went by, and my anxiety was gone. And I remember talking to my therapist afterwards or through this, and instead of like us hashing out some like problem or challenge that I was having to sort of like, weed through things, I was just like gushing about how beautiful life is and how fun it is and the cool things I'm thinking about and these new perspectives I'm adopting and taking, applying in my life, and how this cool thing happened and that cool thing happened. And it got to the point where we both were sort of agreed, like, let's try to wean off my medicine and see what would happen. And she agreed, like, all right, let's try that. And so we did. And I remember getting off my medication and still no anxiety, still no panic attacks. They never came back. And it has been almost 7 years. In July, it'll be 7 years, where I have not had a single day of anxiety since then. Caveat, I've certainly had moments where I feel fear, where I feel insecurity, where I feel, nervousness about something. Like, that still happens. I'm still human. Like, this is the thing I want to like draw a distinction between. I still have the human emotions of like being scared sometimes or being insecure sometimes, but it's not this overwhelming sensation, and it's not this like underlying always present sensation. It's a sensation I get, it's an emotion I get, but then I know that how to navigate those feelings, and I know how to shift them. And I know in time I can do that. And so once I started practicing this, I just felt a newfound sense of lightness and no pressure and ease, just a newfound sense of ease in my life. And I stopped caring about certain things. Like, for example, like, I didn't care if I needed to, like, I didn't care if I pooped my pants going to work, because in my mind I was like, what's the worst thing they do? Fire me? I didn't even care about being fired from my job. I stopped caring if my boyfriend at the time was going to break up with me or something. Like, I stopped caring about certain things that I put so much pressure on before, so much pressure on myself for. And I was just living a completely different life, because in my mind now, if I like shit my pants, like driving to work, in my head, I was like, then I would just turn around and drive home and let work know, and I would take care of myself and then probably come back after, but it's everything. Things that were really scary to me just stopped being scary to me, and things that were scary to me kind of lost their power over me, because I was starting to live a more free life. Okay, so now this leads into, what did I do specifically? And I want to share those things with you. I break it down into 3 different parts. And so I'm going to lay out each piece of it, and then and maybe kind of go into some explanations or some examples. But the first piece that I did was I started paying attention to my emotions and my headspaces. Am I feeling good or am I feeling bad? And then I started doing things that made logical sense to help me in that certain headspace or in that certain moment. So, for example, if I noticed myself feeling, for example, insecure about something, or if I noticed myself feeling scared, or whatever the negative feeling was, I would use that time to go easy on myself and be nice to myself and let myself feel however I need to feel, and not try to like use those moments to take action or do something. I was just like, this is my time to like take my foot off the gas and let myself just be, and let that be okay. And when I would feel good, like I was feeling whenever I was feeling like, empowered or confident or excited or passionate or at peace or relaxed or whatever, then I would that's when I would try to like think about what I'm doing, think about like my goals and dreams, think about what I want my life to look like, think about what I think about like that's when I would try to plan things or try to figure things out. Like that's when I would those moments were the moments that I started using to like figure out my problems or make important choices in my life. And and so that was a huge shift for me because I would so often get myself more in trouble when I was feeling in some kind of negative mood or negative headspace. I would do things, I would still try to like act and I would still try to move and I would still try to like make decisions in that place. And it would just get me in trouble because my thinking was warped in those moments. And so I wasn't making the best decisions anyway. And I wasn't saying the best things. I was really not on my game. And so I ultimately would make things worse, which would then, of course, inflame my anxiety and my worry and my nervousness and all that. So it was a real shift for me to start paying attention to my headspaces and my emotions and start using each moment differently based on if I felt good or if I felt bad. Now, if you're someone who wants to hear more specifically about that or like know more like of the specific things I did, I have a free guide on my website. You can check it out. It's called a vibe guide, basically, and it tells you if you feel good, here are the things you do when you feel good. And if you feel bad, here are the things to do when you feel bad that logically help you in those moments. It's completely free. You can sign up for it on my site. Or if you join my Emotional Mastery newsletter, which is also free, the first email you get is about that specifically because that is, I think, the most important piece or the piece that's like easily actionable that I would recommend first that I saw the most changes with. So, so that's what I like to like teach people first. So feel free to use those resources if it speaks to you and calls to you. So that was the first thing, was paying attention to my headspaces and then acting differently based on if I was feeling good or bad. And then the second thing that really helped me alleviate my anxiety was following what I now call a feel-good lifestyle, which means doing what I like on purpose as much as I can. Doing what I like, doing what I love, doing what makes me happy, following my heart, following my joy, following my excitement, following my bliss, following my passions, following my intuitive inspiration to do certain things or read certain things or watch certain things or take breaks or jump into creative projects. It means saying yes to things that I am like, that I find fun, interesting, or exciting. And just as importantly, saying no to things that don't call to me. Saying no if something doesn't feel right or if something doesn't, or if I don't want to do it. Like there were so many moments, and I truly feel like this was one of the biggest pieces of my anxiety where I was a people pleaser. In some ways, I'm still working through that, kind of. But I cared so much about what other people thought that I would say yes to things that I didn't want to do on a regular basis. And I was also in a relationship at the time, and I always felt like there's like that obligation of like, oh, well, my boyfriend likes to go out and he's an extrovert and he's a social butterfly and he loves doing things. So, and he was sort of like kind of, I don't know, he kind of planned a lot of our week. And so there was a lot of like dinners that we would go to. There was throughout the week, and there was a lot of like friend hangouts, and there was a lot of events or parties or shows that we would go see or whatever. And granted, a lot of that was fun. I'm not saying some of that was absolutely stuff that I liked and enjoyed and wanted to say yes to. But there was a lot of things that we did that I felt out of either guilt or pressure or obligation within myself that I would say yes to it anyway, even though I didn't want to do it, even though I was like nervous to do it, even though it inflamed my anxiety to do it. And by living that way for a while, it sort of like felt because I wasn't living freely my life in the way that I like following my heart. I was going against my heart so often and in such a regular way because I never learned otherwise, and I kind of thought I had to in a lot of ways. That it was causing me it was probably causing me to feel really out of control in a lot of ways because I wasn't speaking up for myself and speaking my truth and saying no and setting boundaries. I was just going through with things. And so living in that way against the grain of my heart for so long, I think caused my body to experience this anxiety. And when I started truly saying no to things that I didn't want to do, like, hey, no thanks, I'd love to, maybe I'd be up for this or that, but I don't really feel like going to that, or not this time, or hey, thanks so much for inviting me, but I think I'm going to pass. And feeling like it was okay to do that, like it was okay to say no, that I was allowed to, you know? And I know that sounds kind of silly in some ways, that like I thought that I wasn't allowed to, but like I wasn't really thinking in those terms before. And so when I started actively practicing that, I said yes to only the things that I truly wanted to do, things that my heart was excited about, things that I was actually interested in, things that felt fun to me. And I said no to the things that I didn't want to do. And I started really being true to myself and not feeling bad that I say no, because I started giving other people the freedom to say no to me too. So like I was like, I'm going to say no to certain invites that I don't want to do, but I'm also giving everyone else the same freedom. If I invite someone to something and they say no, sorry, I can't do it, or I don't feel like it, or not, today's not a good day, or whatever, then I completely accept that. Like, good, I'm good. You should cancel our plans because I want you to do what's right for you and what's right, what speaks to your heart. Like, that's important to me. And I gave other people in my own mind that complete freedom. And so I felt better about taking that freedom for myself and exercising that freedom for myself. Anyway, so that was the second big piece that really broke things open for me in a really cool way and helped me feel like I actually had a sense of freedom and agency over my life. And that was really a light kind of feeling, an empowering feeling. And then the third thing I did was I started practicing positive self-talk. I started reframing how I was thinking about certain things, and I started adopting thoughts that felt more empowering to me, or felt more fun to me, or felt more true to me, felt intuitively good to me, felt logically true to me. Like I just started going like, oh, that's a good way to see that. I'm going to start applying that. I'm going to start reminding myself of that. And then I would just remind myself of these things, these positive things, these empowering things. And if anyone wants a more thorough breakdown, like this is its own, every one of these topics is its own full, like, maybe I'll do a video of each one of these things more in depth, but like, if you are curious about specifically how I do positive self-talk, I call it finding replacement thoughts. And if you want a breakdown of exactly how I do that, I made a video on that you can check out. If it's out already, you could check it out here. Or maybe I'll put it on the end, like at the end credit, for you to check out after this video. But if you're interested, it's like how I explained how to change negative or limiting thoughts or beliefs in a really logical, practical, common sense way, but super effective, super efficient. And I get into all the reasons why it's effective in that video, but it's too much to go into now. But doing that practice of changing the way I was thinking and practicing positive self-talk was a huge game changer for me. And what I realized later, and as I learned more about all of this, by the way, completely changed my life. When I got rid of anxiety, like I literally had almost a decade of anxiety. And when that went away, literally went away after a few days, I was blown away. I was like, how is this real? How is this possible? I didn't think this was real because I was not told that was possible. In fact, I was under the impression that was never going to happen. I was under the impression that I had to manage, that I was going to have anxiety for the rest of my life and all I could do was manage it. But that was not true for me. So part of the reason I share this, and this went into like now me starting to teach what I was doing what I did and what I found helpful in my own life to other people, and then they started seeing really cool relief from their anxiety too. And it happened so frequently that I was like, okay, I get what's going on now. And it sent me down this whole journey of sharing this with other people, but also like learning the mechanics behind what is going on. And what I've discovered was anxiety is an emotion, and our emotions are caused by our thoughts. When we think a thought, we have an emotional response to that thought. When we think a thought, we have an emotional response to that thought. That happens over and over and over again. And so at the end of the day, what was causing my anxiety was all of these thoughts that I had, thoughts that I wasn't even aware of, thoughts that I wasn't even picking up on, thoughts that were just on repeat, on a loop. Like, for example, what if traffic is at standstill and I have to use the bathroom and there's no bathroom nearby, and I poop my pants in the car, and then I get fired from work, and then, I had all these like fear thoughts going on in my head. So of course I felt anxious, because when I was thinking about the situation, like, oh, what if this fearful thing happens? And what if this terrible thing happens? And then what if I'm fired from work? And if I'm fired from work, what? I'm fired from Conan? I'm fired from the dream job that I've like had from childhood? Like, it was all these like disaster thoughts. And so of course I was feeling anxious, because when I think disaster thoughts, it makes total sense that would cause anxiety. But when I started practicing different thoughts, and I started paying attention to my emotions and shifting my thoughts, it completely changed everything. And it makes sense why that works. So all of this, what I'm sharing, it makes logical sense why it works and why it's effective. And so I want to just share with you that, like, if there is someone in your life, or if you've been told, or that you're going to that there's no way out and you'll have anxiety for the rest of your life, I just want to be a voice out there that tells you that may not be true. That may not be true. They could be wrong, like they were wrong with me. And if I had been told like that the possibility exists that my life could completely change, I don't know. I feel like that would have been a really helpful piece of insight and very encouraging for me when I felt like hopelessly stuck in this spiral of anxiety. So that's what I want to share with you now. I hope this has been helpful. I don't know what will ultimately work for anybody, but I know this worked for me. It's worked for people that I've worked with and coached, and I know it's possible that it could work for you too, and I really hope it does. So please take what works from this, leave what doesn't, make this your own, kind of like follow your own heart to the answers that you're looking for. But yeah, I wanted to share my story of anxiety and share exactly that's exactly what I did in order to shift it. I also want to mention, after, I learned this from a spiritual book, like a spiritual self-help book. But it is not required to be spiritual to do what I did. And in fact, I've worked with many non-spiritual people who have seen real relief from their anxiety, because the things that worked, which were, again, like paying attention to your emotions, following your heart, and changing your thoughts, and using more positive self-talk, that's ultimately what worked for me. And you don't have to be spiritual to do those things. That's the cool beauty. Although I really love being spiritual, so like it's definitely a bonus. But anyway, I say that as a cool blue bird flies by me. So yeah, okay. So I think I'll wrap this here. I've been saying this in my last few videos. I'm going to say this in this video too, but I want this to be an interaction. I'm hoping to get out there more. I want to spread what I know, because I know it's been so helpful for me and the people that I've worked with. So I just want this out in the world more. And so I'm going to be making more videos and more content, and I want it to be interactive. I want to hear from you guys, because I want this to be a conversation. I want this to be like real. So if you got anything from this video, please share it below. Like, let me know. Well, I will read all the comments. I will respond to as many as I can. And I want to know if you start practicing any of these things and you see a difference, please let me know. Like, write it in the comments and let me know. Update me. If you have questions about anything that I've talked about, let me know. I would love to answer any questions because I'm sure there's just so much to cover and I can't do it all in one video. So let me know, and then I'm going to use the comments to like base what my future videos are going to be on. So feel free to leave comments, feel free to leave questions, feel free to just say hi. I'd love to know that there are people even just resonating with this. So that encourages me to keep doing it. And I would just love to hear from you. So keep me posted, and give me a like if this has been helpful. Also subscribe if this has been helpful. Give me a subscribe. And I like to, if you want to see what I do with creators who I really like, is I hit subscribe and choose the all feature so that every time they post a video, they get a notification that, hey, Chris posted another video. So if you got something from this and you want to hear more about, I teach about the mind, I teach about the heart, and how to connect the two. I teach emotional mastery. That's the whole idea, is mind, heart, and connecting the two. So if that's something you're interested in, then feel free to subscribe so that you can see all the future videos that I post. I truly believe in self-practice, and I highly encourage it. Everything that I teach can be a self-practice, so please feel free to practice this on your own, any or all of the things that I shared with you. If it resonates, if it feels right to you, if you're drawn to doing that, and let me know how that self-practice goes. But if you're someone who likes extra help or wants someone to hold their hand through this journey, or just wants more personalized guidance on connecting their head and their heart and understanding their emotions and what they really mean and how to shift your thinking to align more with your heart and all of that, then feel free to, I have programs available. I have group classes available, all on my website, link below if that's of interest to you. But either way, do a self-practice, because this stuff is life-changing and it can really bring a lot of magic to our lives, and in very logical ways. Like, everything that I share is very commonsensically helpful. And so, and I've seen it work not only for me, but for a lot of the people that have worked with me. This is like logical why it works, and it's also magical. So I recommend it. Anyway, I think I'll wrap it up here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. I love you. And I will see you in the next video. And if you want to, if you like this video and you want to hear more about how to shift your negative thoughts and your negative and limiting beliefs, then check out this video here.